बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आप देख रहे हैं डिप्लोमेटिक एंड करंट अफेयर्स में डॉक्टर मुनव्वर हुसैन यूट्यूब और फेसबुक के ऊपर। आज हम बात करेंगे हैसम से, और हैसम जर्नलिस्ट हैं, फ़लस्तीन से इनका ताल्लुक़ है और पाकिस्तान के अंदर काफ़ी अरसे से काम कर रहे हैं इंटरनेशनल मीडिया के ऊपर, और उनकी एक्सपर्टीज़ है रशियन इन्वॉल्वमेंट जो मिडल ईस्ट के अंदर है, उसके काजेज़ क्या हैं, उसके इम्प्लिकेशंस क्या हैं, पाकिस्तान किस तरह से देखता है उसको, रशिया किस तरह से देखता है, उसके ऊपर हम बात करेंगे। Azam, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Azam, now how do you see and analyze the Russian involvement in the Middle Eastern affairs? When I say Middle Eastern affairs, it means in the case of Palestine, in the case of Syria, in the case of Libya, even in the case of Iraq and the whole of the Middle East.
I will start with a little bit of historical background about it. The Middle East have been a competition region between Russians and Americans for a very long time, more than 100 years. Even before Quaid. Naming Middle East as Middle East came by one of the naval officers of America telling Britishers to keep an eye on Russian involvement in Middle East. This have been a document in 1908. It was a naval officer who called this region Middle East. Before that, it used to be different other names. So from that time, even before World War I, there have been competition on this region for different strategic reasons, the geography, the resources, different reasons. What happened after World War I, it became Soviet Union against America gradually. In 1973, the turning point of the relations between Middle East and the great powers have been that Sadat, the president of Egypt, changed his understanding of geopolitics. So he shifted from the eastern camp to the western camp. He used to have military experts in his country supervising his military against Israel, which was supported by the western camp, by America and other countries. So he decided that we don't need Russians anymore. We are moving to the other side, and he made agreement which is called Camp David Agreement with Israel of establishing peace and normalizing relationship with Israel, and he visited the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, which because of that he later was assassinated. So this is historical background about the relationship between the Middle Eastern powers, King Faisal, Sadat as president of Egypt, and other countries. After this move by Sadat, the Russian involvement in Middle East was limited to Syria, Libya during Gaddafi era, and Algeria to some extent, military cooperation and some other economic cooperation. The rest of the Arab countries, the Gulf Peninsula or the Gulf countries, used to be against Russians because they used to see the communist approach as a threat to their monarchies and as a threat to the Islamic ideology. Because communism used to promote some values which considered by the scholars at that time against the ideology of Islam in the Arabic Peninsula.
It was propaganda, yeah, it was reality.
50-50 you can say, because no state is without ideology. Russia at that time was promoting communism and some other, between brackets, atheist ideology, but you could have established relations with the state, not with the communism as a ideology. But this is what happened. King Faisal and Sadat made and other leaders from Saudi Arabia after the assassination of King Faisal made relationships with America and cut the relations with Russia. This have been the case for almost 3 or 4 decades. The second turning point about this was the Arab Spring. After the Arab Spring, a new wave of geopolitics have been established in this region. In 2009, Russia's foreign policy document stated that we are coming back to the Middle East. Even before the Middle East, the Arab Spring. Arab Spring started in 2011. In 2009, there have been a decision that Russians want to come back to Middle East. And to my understanding, this returning to Middle East was with a new understanding of rules. In the beginning, Russia used to be supportive of the national movements, the revolutions. Jamal Abdel Nasser used to be considered the revolution leader. And then Sadat inherited his ruling in Egypt. And in this era, Russians came to be allies with the monarchies, not the other way around. which is what they have done. If you look at the developments from 2011 after the Arab Spring, which is the topic of my thesis and my, inshallah, coming soon published book, it will be about this change. In Russian rule in Middle East have, between brackets, they have learned their lesson. That we should not support the movements in the streets, we should support the ruling powers, which can assure commitment to agreements, and it's easy to support them to stay in power. While the Americans have bet on the street movements in the Arab Spring, if we agree with this narration. Yes. This have been the change. It was materialized in 2015 by establishing a military base for the first time for Russia in the Middle East, in Syria. And this was the first military presence, independent military, without a call from any country. They came by their own, they sent warships, and they established a military base. From that point forward, Russian presence in the Middle East is a fact.
Okay, fine. Now, therefore we call it, this is resurgent Russia, because it is re-establishing its influence, especially in the case of Middle East. How can we explain it? What are the factors behind this Russian move in the Middle East? In other words, what are the strategic interests of Russia to have presence in the Middle East?
Okay. There are four main factors. There are some side factors, but these are the main four factors. First factor is security.
Okay.
Pure security. From two perspectives. If you protect your back as a Russia from the Middle East, all types of movement in the Middle East, either expansion of military, giving more bases to America, or even the export of what is considered to be terrorism, which affected Russia during the Chechen War, during some other movements have established some bases in the South Central Asian countries surrounding Russia. This was a security concern. Secondly, security competition with America for the influence in the region. America is sending warships, UK is sending warships, France is sending warships to the Middle East. So why not Russia? This is security perspective. This is second factor. Third factor, which is also part of my coming soon book, is the oil and gas factor. Energy. Not only export and exploration and production of oil and gas, but controlling the market, the international market, or influencing the international market of oil and gas. Because for Russia, they are not only producers of oil and gas, they are also influencers of the international market. How? They want to have a say or a vote in the prices, in the supply and demand in this market, which will decide how much they are earning per year or per month or per day of their own sales. How they are overcoming the sanctions against them. So this was the third interest. The fourth interest is selling weapons to this region. This region is full of conflicts, and after the Arab Spring, the conflicts have increased.
Exactly.
The United States and European Union, they enforce a lot of sanctions, and they enforce a lot of rules, human rights rules and other things, before selling or after selling weapons. Russia does not have much of those rules. Sell more weapons with less price and more freedom, which is what the rulers, the monarchy rulers want. This is how they influence Libya, this is how they influence Syria, this is how they influence Sudan recently, this is how they influence Somalia and Djibouti. So the region is, even there are conflicts in Africa, Western Africa, they have been influenced by the same military. Wagner Group was part of the Russian tools in Syria, in Libya, in East Africa, in West Africa too. So all of these interests were main interests for Russia, plus other things which cooperation, economic cooperation, bilateral relations, etc., etc.
Excellent. Now, do you think that Russian involvement has brought a stability in the Middle East in terms of its security, in terms of its economy, in terms of its society? Russian factor is seen to be positive, or it is a negative?
From my understanding, positive and negative is perception. It depends on who, from which person, from which state, from which perspective you are looking at.
It brought stability?
But it brought more balance.
More balance.
Because when it was a region dominated by Western influence, American, British, French, there was no anybody to balance this dominant influence. When you have an option, Russia, And for example, Saudi Arabia had the option to say to America that we are not selling oil by the prices you decide anymore. We will stop producing oil according to your wishes. Even Egypt had the option that okay, we are buying a nuclear, civilian nuclear projects from Russia or China. We are not obliged to buy from America. And other cases. When you have this option, the Russian option, the Chinese option supported by Russia, it gives more balance to the region.
In other words, multipolarity is giving space the countries like Syria and other smaller nations to play freely and to develop relationship with all key stakeholders of international politics.
Exactly.
And so how do you see the Indian perspective, how Indians they are seeing this development, the Russian involvement in the Middle East, and how Pakistanis they are if you compare their viewpoint regarding this development?
Yes. Both Indians and Pakistanis, they don't have a strong presence inside the Middle East. They have sideline effect or sideline impact on them because of what's happening in the Middle East. So we say the great powers or the big powers like Russia, China, America, they are influencing some of the European countries or the European camp. They are influencing the Middle East, but India and Pakistan are not really influencing. They are getting influenced by what's happening in the Middle East. So if Russia influences the market, the oil and gas market, it gives Pakistan, you have heard maybe, and India the chance to import more Russian oil with decreased prices. Because there is coordination between Russia and Saudi Arabia and the rest of OPEC countries about the prices, about the production. So there is no harm or nobody to blame Pakistan and India to import the Russian oil, despite the American sanctions, etc., etc. When there was exclusive influence of America and the Western powers on Saudi Arabia and the OPEC organization, it was impossible. In last 10 years, there have been development in the oil management. It became OPEC plus. This is the new thing. What is the plus? Plus one, which is Russia.
Exactly.
Historically, it was only OPEC and who's influencing OPEC? America and the Western countries. So this shows that even if you are competing, the coordination about the prices is important for both sides, which is what helping both now. You have seen when Prince Mohammed bin Salman took power, because of Yemen war and other factors, there have been some financial issues in Saudi Arabia. When they agreed with Russia and other producers on the prices and the production, the wealth, the financial wealth came back to Saudi Arabia, the balance. When the oil price decreased, it affects all the producers.
Okay, good. So how Middle Eastern, last question, how Middle Easterns they view India and how they view Pakistan? What is their perception regarding Pakistan and what is their perception regarding India?
When we say Middle East, it's divided تقريبا to three areas. So every area has a perception of these two countries. We have Gulf countries, and we have the Sham countries, which are Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and partially Iraq. And we have North African countries, which is Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco. The North African countries, they perceive both Pakistan and India as important. Pakistan is more important because it's Islamic ally, but they are interested in the military cooperation with both countries. They are interested in the economic cooperation with both countries. This has been clear for a very long time with all the North African countries. When we come to Sham countries, they are more to support Pakistan because of the Palestinian issue and the Kashmiri issue. There is a similarity between Palestinian issue and Kashmiri issue. So wherever you go in Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, they remember Pakistan as the nuclear power, as the only country who does not recognize Israel. They write on their passport that they do not recognize. So they perceive Pakistan as a strong Islamic ally. In Gulf countries, it used to be with Pakistan only. Now it's more balanced between Pakistan and India for many reasons. Part of those reasons are promoting the Indian rule by Saudi Arabia and UAE. Saudi Arabia and UAE established good relations with India for economic interests, for other interests too. So since that happened, Saudi Arabia and UAE are the most influential in the Gulf countries, GCC bloc. If they change the narration, the public opinion will change. So they changed the narration maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now the result is clear. That people in Gulf countries, they see Pakistan and India South Asian countries, so we can establish cooperation with both, but we have historical better relations with Pakistan. This is still there, but still there are a lot of, let's say, questions about the Pakistani cooperation, because some questions about the labor, which is in Gulf countries, some questions about the exports of Pakistan. When you compare, there are some guarantees with Indian exports which are not provided with Pakistani exports. So this have played a significant. For example, when I came to Pakistan, they wanted to export Pakistani rice to Saudi Arabia. So I said, Pakistan produces basmati. Basmati is very good rice, and you use it in your food. And they said, no, we know basmati to be Indian. We cannot import it from Pakistan, which is not technically not true, but because India have promoted their own basmati as the original basmati, nobody cares about the maybe 10%, 15% only imports basmati from Pakistan. So this is
but rather they buy our basmati in Dubai, they repack it and they sell in the Middle East.
And who's that for?
Our fault, in fact.
The promotion, the guarantees, the protecting of the products, this is also duty of the Pakistani authorities, so they can promote their brands, even cultural brand or economical brand in that region. This is what I think about the perception about both countries.
Thank you very much for your time and very good analysis. आपने बात सुनी, और इसका लबिलवाब इसी तरह होगा कि रशिया की जो इन्वॉल्वमेंट है उसके पीछे उसके स्ट्रेटेजिक इंटरेस्ट हैं, सिक्योरिटी इंटरेस्ट हैं, इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट हैं, और रशिया दोबारा रीगेन कर रहा है अपना इन्फ्लुएंस मिडिल ईस्ट के अंदर, पहली बात। और दूसरी बात ये कि इसके इम्प्लीकेशन ये है कि मिडिल ईस्ट के अंदर आपको बैलेंस नज़र आता है, और तीसरा ये कि इंडिया और पाकिस्तान असर नहीं डालते मिडिल ईस्ट पर। जो भी मिडिल ईस्टर्न डेवलपमेंट हो रही है वो इंडिया और पाकिस्तान की इकॉनमी पे और पॉलिटी पे और सोसाइटी पे उसका असर पड़ता है, और परसेप्शन भी मोर और लेस बैलेंस है। आपने सुना, नॉर्थ अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज़ जो हैं वो पाकिस्तान की तरफ देखते हैं, लेकिन ट्रेड वो इंडिया के साथ भी करना चाहते हैं, और जो साम कंट्रीज़ हैं वहाँ पे वो पाकिस्तान के साथ ज़्यादा दिली तौर पे मुंसलिक हैं, बिकॉज ऑफ फ़लस्तीन और कश्मीर इशू के अंदर मुमासलत नज़र आती है। लेकिन जो गल्फ़ कंट्रीज़ हैं वो ट्रेड इस वक्त डेवलप कर रहे हैं खुद इंडिया के साथ भी, और उनके रिलेशन पाकिस्तान के साथ भी हैं। तो ये सारी एनालिसिस बड़ी ज़बरदस्त एनालिसिस है, आपकी फीडबैक का इंतज़ार रहेगा। नए दिन के साथ, नए इशू के साथ आपकी खिदमत में हाज़िर होंगे। इजाज़त दीजिए, अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।